The year was 2387 and Earth was dying. Giant alien ships surrounded the blue planet like hungry wolves around wounded prey. For 3 long months, the Zephyrian fleet had blocked out the sun with their massive warships. Each ship was as big as a small moon and covered in sharp metal spikes that looked like teeth. The aliens wanted all humans to leave Earth and work as slaves in distant mining colonies. Admiral Kate Morrison stood in the control room of Luna Station, watching the enemy ships through the big windows. Her gray hair was pulled back tight and her blue eyes showed the weight of knowing that billions of people might die soon. The human fleet that once protected Earth was almost gone. Only a few small ships remained after the terrible battle at Titan where most of their forces were destroyed. The aliens had given humanity one final day to surrender. If Earth did not give up by tomorrow, the Zephyrians would start destroying every city on the planet. Kate knew they had no choice but to accept defeat. The enemy had too many ships and weapons that could turn entire mountains into dust. Lieutenant Commander Jake Sullivan sat at his station reading the long-range sensors. His hands shook as he watched. The screen showing thousands of enemy contacts surrounding Earth. Jake was young with brown hair and had joined the fleet hoping to explore space, not fight for humanity's survival. He kept checking the readings, hoping to find some weakness in the alien formation, but there was none. "Admiral, we have something strange on the sensors," Jake said with his voice breaking. "There is a massive object coming from the outer edge of the solar system." Kate walked over to look at the display. The readings showed something huge moving toward Earth, but it was not like any ship in their database. The energy patterns were completely unknown, and the size was 3 times larger than their biggest battleship. As it came closer, Kate could see the outline of something that made her heart stop beating for a moment. "That cannot be real," she whispered to herself. "Run the scan again." Jake pressed the buttons and the same reading appeared. The ship approaching them had the design of the UES Valiant. Every person in the Earth fleet knew about the Valiant, even though none of them had ever seen it. It was the first supercarrier humanity had ever built back in 2341. The ship was meant to be the pride of the human fleet with 50,000 crew members and weapons that pushed the limits of their technology. But the Valiant had disappeared during its first mission 46 years ago. It had gone on a routine patrol to the edge of known space and never came back. Search teams looked for years but found nothing. Everyone believed the ship and all its crew were dead and lost forever in the cold darkness between stars. "Get me a direct communication link with that ship," Kate ordered. "I need to know who is on board." The communication officer tried to connect but got only static. The ship was still too far away and seemed to be using some kind of technology that blocked normal radio signals. Kate watched as the massive vessel moved closer to Earth with smooth movements that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. General Alex Turner was brought to the alien command ship to discuss the final surrender terms. The Zephyrian leader, called Overlord Vex, had demanded that a human representative come aboard to witness their defeat. Alex was a tall man with black hair who had fought in many battles before the aliens arrived. He stood on the bridge of the enemy flagship surrounded by creatures that looked like giant insects, with metal parts attached to their bodies. Vex stood 12 feet tall with 4 arms and eyes that glowed red in the darkness. His voice sounded like metal scraping against stone when he spoke. "Your species will learn to serve us well in the mines. Those who resist will feed our ship's organic fuel systems." Alex tried not to show fear as he looked at the displays showing Earth surrounded by the alien fleet. He knew that in a few hours humanity would either be slaves or dead. The general had seen the reports about the approaching unknown ship, but did not want to give the aliens any reason to attack early. Back on Luna Station, Kate received a priority message from Earth Defense Command. The leaders of every nation were demanding to know what the mysterious ship was and if it could help save them. Kate had no answers to give them. The Valiant had been lost before she even joined the fleet, and the official records about its disappearance were classified above her security level. "Admiral, the unknown ship is slowing down," Jake reported. "It will reach the outer defense perimeter in 30 minutes. Kate looked at the tactical display showing the positions of all ships in the area. The alien fleet had formed a perfect sphere around Earth with no gaps for anything to get through. Any ship trying to reach the planet would have to fight through thousands of enemy vessels. Even the legendary Valiant could not survive against those odds if it really was the lost supercarrier. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission," the communication officer announced. Kate nodded for him to put it through the speakers. Static filled the room for several seconds before a voice came through clearly. It was a human voice speaking English, but there was something strange about it that made everyone in the control room feel cold. Luna Station, this is Captain Ryan Clark of the United Earth ship Valiant, requesting permission to enter Earth. Space. The room became completely silent. Kate felt her hands start to shake as she realized what she was hearing. Captain Ryan Clark had been the commanding officer of the Valiant when it disappeared. According to the records, he would be over 90 years old now if he was still alive. Captain Clark, this is Admiral Morrison, she replied into her microphone. Your ship has been missing for 46 years. Please explain your current status and the condition of your crew. The voice that answered sounded exactly like a man in his 40s, not someone who should be ancient or dead. Admiral, we have been preparing for this day. The Valiant and her crew are ready to defend Earth against any threat. Kate looked at Jake, who was staring at his sensor readings with wide eyes. The young officer turned to her with a face pale as snow. Admiral, the energy readings from that ship are impossible. It is showing power levels that our instruments cannot even measure properly. The mysterious ship continued moving toward Earth and the waiting alien fleet that had come to destroy humanity. Captain Ryan Clark stood on the bridge of the UES Valiant, but his body was not completely solid like a normal person. Sometimes he looked real and sometimes you could see through him like he was made of blue light. The bridge around him glowed with strange energy that moved like water across the walls and ceiling. His crew worked at their stations, but they all had the same weird appearance of being half real and half made of pure light. Navigation set course for Earth, Ryan commanded. His voice sounded normal, but it seemed to come from everywhere at once instead of just his mouth. It is time we came home. Dr. Lisa Hayes walked toward the captain carrying data tablets that floated in the air around her hands instead of being held normally. She had been the chief science officer when the Valiant first launched, and now she looked exactly the same age as she did 46 years ago. Her blonde hair moved as if she was underwater and her green eyes glowed with inner light. Captain, the readings show we have successfully returned to our original timeline, she reported. The crew's molecular structure has been permanently changed by our journey through the void dimension, but we are stable. Ryan nodded as he remembered what had happened to them during that first mission so long ago. They had been testing a new faster-than-light drive system that was supposed to let them travel further into space than any human ship before. Something had gone wrong during the jump, and instead of reaching their destination, they had broken through into a completely different dimension. In that strange place there was no normal matter or energy like they knew. Everything was made of pure thought and possibility. At first the crew thought they were dead, but then they realized they were somewhere that existed between the normal universe and something else entirely. The laws of physics did not work the same way, and they found they could do things that should have been impossible. Dr. Hayes had spent years studying what happened to them in that place. We learned to exist in multiple states at the same time, she explained to the newer crew members who had joined them during their long journey. Our consciousness expanded beyond the limits of normal human minds. The ship itself had been changed too. The Valiant could now move between dimensions and exist in several places at once. Its weapons drew power directly from the fabric of space and time. The hull could become solid or let things pass right through it depending on what the crew needed. Most importantly, they had learned to see across dimensions and watch what was happening in their home universe. For 46 years, they had observed Earth from their strange realm between realities. They watched as humanity spread to other planets and built new colonies among the stars. They saw the wars and the peace treaties and the slow growth of human civilization. Most importantly, they saw the Zephyrian fleet heading toward Earth 3 months ago. All crew members, this is your captain, Ryan announced over the ship's communication system. His voice reached every corner of the massive vessel, including areas that seemed to exist in folded space. We have been gone for nearly half a century, but we never forgot our oath to protect humanity. In the hangar bays, 50,000 crew members prepared for battle. Fighter pilots climbed into aircraft that looked like they were built from metal and lightning. Engineers worked on weapons that used principles of science that normal humans had not discovered yet. Medical teams prepared equipment that could heal wounds by reversing time around injured tissue. Commander Sam Peterson stood in the tactical center coordinating the ship's weapon systems. He was a big man with red hair who had been the weapons officer during their original mission. Now his job was much more complicated, because their guns could shoot through dimensions and hit targets. that we're not even in the same space as the Valiant. Captain, all weapon systems are charged and ready, he reported. We can engage the enemy fleet as soon as we reach firing range. The tactical displays showed the Zephyrian ships surrounding Earth in a perfect sphere formation. There were over 10,000 enemy vessels of various sizes, from small fighters to massive command ships. Each one had weapons that could destroy cities and shields that could stop nuclear bombs. Against any normal human fleet, they would be unbeatable. But the Valiant was no longer a normal ship. During their time in the Void Dimension, the crew had learned to manipulate reality itself. They could make their attacks appear anywhere they wanted, regardless of distance or obstacles. They could phase in and out of normal space to avoid enemy fire. Most importantly, they had learned to work together as a single consciousness that could react faster than any individual mind. Doctor, are you detecting any weaknesses in their formation? Ryan asked Lisa as she studied the enemy fleet through sensors that could see across multiple dimensions. Their command structure depends on quantum communication, links between the flagship and the other vessels, she replied. If we can disrupt those connections, the fleet will lose coordination. Ryan smiled for the first time since they had returned to normal space. His face looked completely human when he did, but then flickered back to the strange half-energy state. Then that is where we will strike first. The Valiant moved closer to the edge of the alien blockade. From the outside, it looked like a single ship approaching an overwhelming enemy force, but the crew knew they were much more than they appeared. They had spent decades learning to become something beyond normal human limitations while never forgetting what they were fighting to protect. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Brooks led the fighter squadrons from the main hangar bay. She had been a young pilot when they first disappeared, and now she commanded thousands of aircraft that could appear anywhere in space instantly. Her fighters existed in a state between dimensions until they were needed for combat. All squadrons report ready for deployment, she announced to the bridge. We can begin the attack as soon as you give the order, Captain. Ryan looked at the display showing Earth surrounded by its enemies. He thought about all the people on that planet who had no idea they were about to be saved by ghosts from the past. The crew of the Valiant had given up their normal human existence to gain the power needed to protect their home world. Begin the attack, he ordered quietly. Show them why humanity should never be underestimated. Overlord Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship called the Worldbreaker and looked at the tactical display showing a single human ship approaching his massive fleet. The alien commander was 12 feet tall with 4 arms that ended in claws sharp enough to cut through steel. His exoskeleton was black metal fused with living tissue that pulsed with green veins carrying nutrient fluid throughout his body. A single vessel dares to challenge our entire armada, he said to his bridge crew. His voice came from multiple vocal chambers that made it sound like several creatures speaking at once. These humans grow more desperate as their final hour approaches. The Zephyrian fleet contained over 10,000 ships ranging from small fighters to massive dreadnoughts the size of small cities. Each vessel was grown rather than built using biotechnology that merged living creatures with advanced machinery. Their weapons could tear apart planets, and their shields could stop the explosion of entire stars. No force in the galaxy had ever stood against them and survived. General Alex Turner was brought to the bridge to watch what the aliens believed would be humanity's final defeat. He was still wearing his Earth defense uniform, but his hands were bound with energy restraints that burned his skin if he tried to move them. The general had fought in dozens of battles but had never seen anything like the alien technology surrounding him. That ship approaching us, Alex said quietly as he recognized the outline on the display. That is impossible. The Valiant has been missing for decades. Vex turned his red glowing eyes toward the human prisoner. You know this vessel? He asked with interest. Tell me about its capabilities so we can destroy it quickly. Alex shook his head. I only know the stories. It was supposed to be humanity's greatest warship, but it disappeared on its first mission. Everyone thought it was destroyed or lost in deep space. The tactical officer announced that the human ship was dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the battle zone. Immediately, the sensor readings began showing impossible data. The vessel appeared solid one moment and then became transparent like it was made of ghost light. Energy readings spiked beyond anything their instruments could measure properly. Captain Ryan Clark's image appeared on communication channels across both fleets. Half of his face looked completely human, while the other half shimmered with energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. When he spoke, his voice reached every ship in the area, even though they were using different communication systems. Zephyrian, Forces, this is Captain Ryan Clark of the United Earthship. Valiant, he announced calmly. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from Earth space before we demonstrate why humanity should never be underestimated. The alien bridge crew began clicking and hissing in their native language as they tried to understand what they were seeing. The human ship was showing energy signatures that defied everything they knew about physics. Their sensors indicated it was simultaneously in multiple locations and existing in several dimensions at once. Vex's laugh boomed across the bridge like the sound of breaking stone. 30 seconds, he repeated with amusement. Your species' arrogance knows no bounds. He turned to his weapons commander. Destroy that relic immediately. The weapons officer began charging the flagship's main guns while sending orders to the rest of the fleet. Within seconds, every Zephyrian ship in the area was targeting the lone human vessel. Plasma beams that could melt continents locked onto the Valiant along with gravity bombs that could collapse space itself. Fire all weapons, Vex commanded. The Zephyrian fleet unleashed everything they had at the mysterious ship. Thousands of energy beams streaked through space along with missiles that could crack moons in half. Molecular disruptors that could tear apart matter at the atomic level followed behind waves of pure destruction that lit up the darkness. Like a second sun, Alex watched in horror, expecting to see the Valiant torn apart by the overwhelming firepower. Instead, something impossible happened. All the weapons passed completely through the ship as if it was not really there. The energy beams and missiles continued past their target and struck empty space while the Valiant remained completely undamaged. What kind of defensive technology is that? The alien tactical officer asked in confusion. Our weapons are not being stopped or deflected. They are passing through the target as if it does not exist. Before anyone could answer, the human ship vanished completely from their sensors. For several seconds, there was no trace of it anywhere in the surrounding space. Then it reappeared directly behind the Zephyrian formation, having somehow traveled through the entire fleet without being detected. Captain, Clark's voice spoke again, but this time it came from inside their own bridge, somehow bypassing all their communication filters. Time is up, he said quietly. The first sign that something was wrong came from the outer edge of the alien fleet. Ships began reporting that their weapons were malfunctioning and firing at their own vessels. The tactical display showed energy beams appearing from nowhere and striking Zephyrian ships with their own weapon signatures. How are they making our ships attack each other? Vex demanded as he watched his fleet begin to tear itself apart. This is impossible. Dr. Lisa Hayes worked from the science laboratory aboard the Valiant, coordinating attacks that manipulated space and time itself. Her consciousness was linked directly to the ship's systems, allowing her to process information faster than any normal human mind. She could see the quantum structure of the enemy vessels and find weaknesses that existed across multiple dimensions. Captain, I am detecting temporal fluctuations in their weapon systems, she reported. We can create feedback loops that will make their attacks target themselves. The Valiant's counterattack was unlike anything ever seen in galactic warfare. Instead of firing conventional weapons, the Supercarrier bent reality around its targets. Enemy ships found themselves caught in time loops where they fired at themselves from moments in the past. Others experienced localized gravity wells that crushed their hulls while leaving nearby vessels completely untouched. Commander Sam Peterson coordinated the impossible assault from the tactical center. Engaging targets with chronoton torpedoes, he announced as weapons that existed in folded time struck enemy ships before they were even fired. Fighter squadrons launched from hangar bays that seemed to contain infinite space. Thousands of small craft appeared throughout the enemy formation, having traveled through dimensions to bypass their defenses. Each pilot had been transformed by their journey through the void and could phase their ships between realities at will. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Brooks led her squadron in a direct attack on the World Breaker itself. Her fighter called Phantom 1 passed through the flagship's shields like they were not there and appeared inside the enemy hangar bay. The explosion that followed tore the massive vessel apart from within. How are they doing this? Vex screamed as his command ship began breaking apart around him. No species has technology this advanced. General Turner smiled grimly as he watched the alien fleet crumble. What you are seeing is not technology, he said. It is evolution. Humanity spent 46 years learning to become something more than we were. The battle raged for 3 hours, but the outcome had been decided in the first 30 seconds. The Zephyrian Confederation had conquered half the galaxy using their superior numbers and biotechnology. They had never encountered an enemy that could ignore the basic laws of physics and attack from multiple dimensions at the same time. Commander Sam Peterson stood in the tactical center of the Valiant, surrounded by displays that showed the destruction of the alien fleet in real time. His red hair flickered between solid matter and pure energy as he coordinated attacks that bent space and time around their targets. Each weapon fired from the Supercarrier existed in several dimensions simultaneously. Target the command ship's power core, he ordered his weapons team. Use a quantum resonance torpedo set to phase through their shields on the 7th dimensional layer. The weapon that fired from the Valiant looked like a ball of concentrated starlight. It passed through normal space without interacting with any matter until it reached its target. Then it phased into the same dimension as the enemy ship's reactor and exploded with the force of a small sun. The alien flagship broke apart in a cascade of secondary explosions that lit up the darkness around Earth. Dr. Lisa Hayes worked from her laboratory monitoring the quantum effects of their attacks. Her consciousness had expanded far beyond normal human limits during their journey through the void dimension. She could perceive the fundamental structure of reality and manipulate it like a musician playing an instrument made of pure physics. Captain, I am detecting instabilities in the local space-time continuum, she reported to Ryan, who stood on the bridge, existing in multiple realities at once. Our weapons are creating ripple effects that could damage Earth if we are not careful. Ryan nodded, understanding the danger. The power they had gained came with great responsibility. They could destroy entire solar systems if they lost control of their abilities. Limit our attacks to localized reality distortions only, he commanded. We cannot risk harming the planet we came back to protect. The alien fleet tried to adapt to the impossible attacks, but they had no defense against enemies who could exist outside normal space. Zephyrian ships fired their weapons at targets that were not really there, while the real Valiant appeared behind them to strike from unexpected angles. Some enemy vessels found themselves attacked by their own weapons from the future, while others were crushed by gravity that came from parallel dimensions. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Brooks led her fighter squadrons through battles that took place across multiple realities at once. Her aircraft could phase between dimensions to avoid enemy fire, and then reappear inside hostile ships to attack from within. The pilots had learned to think as a single unified consciousness, while maintaining their individual personalities. Alpha, squadron engaging the enemy carrier. Group, she announced as her fighters disappeared from normal space and materialized inside the hangar bay of a massive alien ship. The explosions that followed tore the vessel apart from the inside out. Overlord Vex watched his mighty fleet being systematically destroyed by weapons and tactics he could not understand. The Worldbreaker was dying around him as quantum fires burned through its living hull. His forearms worked frantically at the control systems, trying to coordinate a retreat, but most of his ships were too damaged to escape. How is this possible, he demanded, from his bridge officers who were just as confused as their commander. We have conquered thousands of worlds and destroyed entire civilizations. How can a single human ship defeat our entire armada? The answer came from General Alex Turner, who had been freed from his restraints when the ship's security systems failed. You made a mistake, he said as he watched the tactical display showing the destruction of the alien fleet. You thought humanity was weak because we had small ships and simple weapons. You never considered that we might have something you could never understand. What could you possess that we do not? Vex asked as his ship continued to break apart around them. Alex smiled as escape pods began launching from the dying flagship. We have the ability to become more than what we were born as. The crew of the Valiant spent 46 years learning to transcend the limitations that once bound them. They gave up their normal existence to gain the power needed to protect their home. The battle continued with the Valiant systematically dismantling what remained of the Zephyrian fleet. Ships that tried to flee found themselves caught in temporal loops that brought them back to the battle zone. Others discovered that their faster-than-light drives had been sabotaged by attacks that existed in the past, before they were even made. Captain Ryan Clark stood on his bridge watching the enemy forces crumble. His form flickered between human appearance and pure energy as he coordinated the final phase of the assault. All enemy command ships have been destroyed, he announced to his crew. Begin rescue operations for any surviving alien personnel. Dr. Hayes looked surprised. Captain, they came here to enslave or destroy humanity. Why are we saving them? Ryan's face became completely solid for a moment, showing the man he had been before their transformation, because that is what separates us from them. We have the power to destroy or the wisdom to show mercy. Today we choose to demonstrate both. The remaining Zephyrian ships began surrendering as they realized the futility of continuing the fight. Those that refused to give up found their weapons turned into harmless light displays while their engines stopped working completely. The Valiant had gained mastery over technology itself during their journey through dimensions that existed beyond normal understanding. Commander Peterson reported the final casualty numbers. Enemy fleet strength reduced to 0 effective combat units. Approximately 3,000 alien vessels destroyed and 7,000 disabled. No damage to the Valiant or any human installations. The news was transmitted to Earth, where billions of people had watched the impossible battle unfold in the skies above their planet. Humanity had been saved by ghosts from the past who had learned to become gods without losing their souls. The Zephyrian Confederation would remember this day as the moment they learned that some species could not be conquered because they refused to accept the limitations that others took for granted. Admiral Kate Morrison watched from Luna Station as the alien fleet surrendered or fled into deep space. The threat that had hung over Earth for 3 months was gone in less than half a day. The impossible had become reality through the sacrifice of 50,000 humans who had given up their normal existence to gain the power needed to save their homeworld. "Get me a communication link with Captain Clark," she ordered. "I think it is time we welcomed the Valiant home." The UES Valiant positioned itself in Earth's orbit where it belonged after 46 years of absence. The massive supercarrier looked like a ghost ship made of metal and starlight as it phased between dimensions. From the planet's surface, billions of people could see it with their naked eyes as a shimmering point of light that seemed to exist in several places at once. Admiral Kate Morrison led a delegation aboard the Valiant to meet the crew that had been presumed dead for nearly half a century. The transport shuttle passed through some kind of energy barrier that tingled against their skin before landing, in a hangar bay that seemed much larger inside than it appeared from outside. The walls pulsed with soft blue light and the air itself felt charged with possibilities. Captain Ryan Clark met them at the airlock wearing a uniform that looked exactly like standard Earth Fleet issue, except that it sometimes became transparent like his body. He saluted Admiral Morrison with movements that seemed perfectly normal, until you noticed his arm pass through solid objects when he was not concentrating on staying physical. "Captain Clark," Kate said, returning the salute. "On behalf of humanity, I thank you for returning when we needed you most. Your sacrifice saved our entire species from slavery or extinction." Ryan's face became completely solid for a moment, showing the emotions he still felt despite his transformation. "Admiral, the Valiant never really left. We have been watching and waiting for the day when Earth would face a threat beyond conventional military response." The delegation toured the ship's corridors, which existed in a state of controlled dimensional flux. Some sections appeared completely normal, while others faded into realms of pure energy, where the crew moved like beings made of living light. The 50,000 people aboard had all undergone the same transformation that allowed them to exist between realities. Dr. Lisa Hayes met them in the main science laboratory, where she was working on technology that would change humanity's future. Her blonde hair moved as if she was underwater, and her hands could manipulate objects that existed in multiple dimensions at the same time. She had spent decades studying their condition and learning to control their new abilities. "The transformation is not easy," she explained to the delegation as she showed them equipment that seemed to be built from crystallized space and time. "Those who undergo the process must be willing to give up their normal human existence. But in return they gain abilities that will ensure humanity never again faces extinction." Kate looked at the strange devices surrounding them. "What exactly are you offering us, Doctor?" Lisa smiled and her entire body flickered with energy for a moment. "We can teach your people to follow in our footsteps. The technology exists to transform willing volunteers into beings who can transcend the limitations that once bound our species. Imagine ships that can appear anywhere in the galaxy instantly. Weapons that can reach through time itself to strike enemies before they attack. Defenses that exist in dimensions where hostile forces cannot even perceive them." The tour continued. Through sections of the ship that defied understanding, they saw fighter bays that contained infinite space where thousands of aircraft waited in folded reality. They visited medical centers where doctors could heal injuries by reversing time around damaged tissue. They observed training areas where crew members practiced manipulating the fundamental forces of existence. Commander Sam Peterson demonstrated their tactical capabilities by creating a small star in the palm of his hand and then making it disappear into another dimension. "We have learned to work with the basic building blocks of reality itself," he explained. "Energy and matter respond to our will because we exist partially outside the normal rules that govern the universe." The ceremony concluded with Captain Ryan addressing Earth directly. His image appeared on every screen across the planet, from the largest cities to the smallest research stations orbiting distant moons. His voice reached every human settlement in the solar system as he spoke words that would be remembered for generations. "People of Earth today marks not just our survival, but our ascension." He began with his form solidifying to appear completely human. "The galaxy trembled when they thought we were weak and divided. Now they will tremble for an entirely different reason. Humanity has learned to transcend the limitations that once bound us, and we will use these gifts to protect not just ourselves, but any species that faces the tyranny we just defeated." The broadcast continued as Ryan explained what had happened to the Valiant during their long absence. He described their accidental journey into the void dimension and the decades they spent learning to become something more than human while never forgetting their duty to protect Earth. He told of watching their homeworld through dimensional windows and preparing for the day when their enhanced abilities would be needed. "We offer this gift to any who are willing to make the sacrifice," he announced. "The transformation cannot be undone, and those who undergo it will never again be fully human in the traditional sense, but they will gain the power to ensure that no force in the galaxy can threaten our species or our allies." In the months that followed, volunteers from across the solar system arrived at Earth to undergo the dimensional transformation. Scientists and soldiers, doctors and engineers, teachers and artists all came forward willing to give up their normal existence to become guardians of humanity. The process was difficult and not everyone survived it, but those who succeeded became part of something greater than themselves. The Valiant remained in Earth's orbit, no longer a ghost ship, but a guardian watching over humanity's home. Its crew worked to establish training facilities where the new volunteers could learn to control their abilities. They shared the knowledge gained during their long journey through dimensions that existed beyond normal understanding. Admiral Morrison was among the first to volunteer for the transformation. She felt the responsibility to understand what her people were becoming and to help guide humanity into this new phase of existence. The process took 3 weeks, during which her body learned to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, while her mind expanded to perceive realities that normal humans could never imagine. Dr. Hayes supervised each transformation personally, ensuring that the volunteers retained their humanity even as they gained godlike powers. "The most important thing to remember," she told each new recruit, "is that we are still human at our core. Our enhanced abilities are tools to protect and serve, not weapons to dominate or control." The galaxy watched nervously as reports spread about humanity's transformation. Species that had once considered humans to be primitive upstarts now treated Earth with the respect reserved for elder civilizations. The Zephyrian Confederation sent diplomatic envoys to negotiate peace treaties, and several other aggressive empires quietly abandoned their expansion plans toward human space. But the most significant change came from within human civilization itself. The knowledge that they could transcend their physical limitations gave people hope and purpose they had never felt before. Scientific research accelerated as enhanced. Humans could perceive dimensions of reality that normal science had never suspected. Art and culture flourished as creators gained access to inspiration from realms beyond normal imagination. Captain Ryan Clark stood on the bridge of the Valiant, looking down at the blue marble that had given birth to his species. His crew moved around him, existing in states between matter and energy, as they monitored the galaxy for threats to their home. In the void between dimensions, other lost human ships were beginning to receive their beacon and prepare to return home to a species that had learned to become gods without losing their humanity. The stars themselves would remember this day as the moment when Earth's children stopped being prey and became the hunters. The galaxy trembled still, but now it trembled with respect for a species that refused to accept defeat and instead chose to evolve beyond the limitations that others considered absolute. Humanity had written its most magnificent chapter, not through conquest or destruction, but through the sacrifice of those willing to become more than human, to protect what made them human in the first place.